Imagine a patch of desert, barely the size of the state of New Jersey. It has no oil, it has no gold, its population is less than 1 million people, and a vast majority of its land is entirely uninhabitable. Yet, on this tiny scorching stretch of earth, the armed forces of the United States, China, France, Japan, and Italy are all stationed permanently, their military bases sitting just miles apart from one another. How did a barren, resource-poor nation become the most militarized, expensive, and sought-after geopolitical real estate on Earth? And more importantly, as tensions between the United States and China reach boiling point, what happens if this fragile balance of superpower rivals suddenly collapses? Welcome to Djibouti. In this video, we are going to unravel the mystery of this tiny African nation, often dubbed the Singapore of Africa. We will explore the incredible power of its geography, trace its history from a colonial outpost to the ultimate global chessboard, and break down why the world's most powerful militaries are practically sharing a fence. Finally, we will look at the explosive peak of the story, the rising dangerous friction between the US and China that threatens to turn this strategic playground into a global flashpoint. Let's begin. To understand Djibouti, you have to understand the power of the map. As one Djiboutian official famously told the press, "Our geography is our main national resource, like oil for Gulf states." Djibouti sits right on the edge of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. In Arabic, this translates to the Gate of Tears. It is a narrow maritime chokepoint, barely 18 miles wide at its tightest point, that connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean. Why does this matter? Because every ship traveling between Europe and Asia through the Suez Canal must pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Around 10 to 15% of global trade, millions of barrels of oil, and major internet cables all pass through this tiny gateway. If Bab el-Mandeb closes, the world feels the impact. Djibouti is just as important on land. Neighboring Ethiopia with no coastline depends on Djibouti's ports for almost all of its trade. President Ismail Omar Guelleh realized that Djibouti's greatest resource wasn't oil or minerals, it was its location. So instead of exporting resources, the country began leasing land to foreign militaries. France stayed after independence, but everything changed after September 11th. The United States established Camp Lemonnier, its only permanent military base in Africa, using it to launch operations across Somalia and Yemen. Soon, Somali piracy brought more countries. Japan, Italy, and other allies also established military facilities to protect global shipping. Then came the biggest turning point. China opened its first overseas military base in Djibouti to secure its trade routes and expand the Belt and Road Initiative. Today, Djibouti is the only country where American and Chinese military bases stand just a few miles apart. That has turned this tiny nation into the front line of the US-China rivalry, with both sides accusing each other of surveillance and interference. At the same time, China invested billions in Djibouti's infrastructure, leaving the country heavily dependent on Chinese loans, while the United States worries Beijing could gain control of its strategic ports. Djibouti now performs a delicate balancing act, hosting American troops, relying on Chinese investment, and working with several other global powers. So how did this tiny desert nation become one of the world's most strategic countries? By weaponizing its geography. The fate of global commerce may depend on one tiny nation called Djibouti. In today's world, the most valuable resource isn't always what's underground. The consequences could disrupt global trade and push the world's biggest powers into direct confrontation. The fate of global commerce may depend on one tiny nation called Djibouti.